3, 2, 1.
Yeah, clear.
I thought we were all ready for this.
I'm done.
All right. Okay. We ready?
It's been.
It's been running. Welcome to Meet Me in the City, a podcast exploring music through the boroughs of America. I'm joined today with my two co-hosts, Dan and Sean. My name is Will. Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Clayton.
I'm Sean Johnson.
I'm Will Lazier. It's great to be with you. What are we doing with this podcast? Well, in these first few moments, we want to think about the who, what, why, when, and where. And we start with the city of Dayton. What about Dayton, Dan?
Dayton is basically my hometown. I've lived here my whole life, and that's basically the basis of my music life, with starting playing at Canal Street Tavern when I was 17 years old, playing in bands around Dayton, and then going on and creating the Dayton Music Fest with you guys.
Sean, why Dayton?
Yeah, I grew up in Centerville, suburb of Dayton, and what's cool about Dayton, I think, is just the history of the music from Dayton. And when we were coming up, which we'll talk about in this podcast, of when we started to play in bands and get our feet wet, is just the amount of bands that have come out of Dayton, and we think it's really cool, and that's why we want to kind of highlight the scene in Dayton.
Yeah, same for me. I'm from Dayton proper. Went to Dayton Public Schools. I love the city. I love the state of Ohio, and I don't think we could start with a better reference point than Dayton. And I feel like as the podcast goes on, Dayton will be kind of a soft landing place for us to come back to. So let's talk about where we're from. Dan?
Originally from Tip City. Sean and I have been friends since I was 13 years old, so I spent a lot of time in Centerville and Dayton.
All suburbs of Dayton.
All suburbs of Dayton. And but really Dayton was the place to come. When you're in a band, start playing music, Dayton was where you came to. And really the hub of music in this area.
Mm-hmm. John?
Well, I grew up in Centerville, and I've known Dan for a long time. We were in our first band together way back in the 80s, and Dayton was, at that time, made up of a lot of different styles, and when we were coming out of that band into other bands, the scene,
time period that was
late 80s, early 90s, the Dayton music scene was just booming, with underground, indie rock and punk and just you name it. There's all sorts of different bands that were coming up then, all centered around Canal Street Tavern, which we will talk about later in this podcast. It was a vital part of the scene, we all believe. And so well,
I was mentioning to a friend of mine I played in a band with back in the day yesterday that we were doing this, and I told him one of the touch tones, at least as we talk about Dayton, is Canal Street Tavern. Dan's already mentioned it. Sean's mentioned it. Some of the first shows I ever saw live, at least local music, was at Canal Street Tavern. And so we'll hear guests that we have lined up. We'll hear people talking about the Dayton music scene. If you've watched even clips of Dayton music from the 90s, you can find stuff from Canal Street Tavern. And so that's some of my earliest memories of seeing local music was certainly Canal Street, because you had touring musicians that came through there. I started I'm from Dayton proper, and I didn't really get into playing music until really well into my 20s. And that almost, within just a few years led to me playing in a band and then being at shows locally, booking shows, being involved in the Dayton Music Fest, and I have as I've already said, a real love for this city, and I love to tell anybody about it I talk music with that Dayton has this rich heritage, and I think it's deserving of really a podcast on its own, but we're going to do some deep dives on some of the legacy acts that have come through here, some of the bands that are still doing it, and then some of the bands who made it out of the Miami Valley, and I'm excited to do that. Let's think back to some of our first musical memories, because those are formative for each of us. First instrument, Dan.
Guitar. My dad was a singer. He had a tenor guitar, a 4-string tenor guitar.
Oh, wow.
And he would play the same stinking songs over and over again.
Give us a little bar, too.
Johnny went to Horton, he did go. Mm-hmm. Johnny went to Horton, he did go. Ooh. Stuff like that.
Wow,
You're
good.
Hey, I was a singer once in a rock and roll band. So guitar, to be honest, I'm not that great of guitarist, but that was one thing I want. When we talk about when I was growing up. Music played such a big role in my life. So I'd sit in my room. I had a little hi-fi record player that was my mom's, listening to 45s, and then I found my stepdad's Beatle album, and then I found my sister's Bread albums, and it kept growing from there. And but then once I learned to play guitar, just as bad as a guitarist I am, then I could start writing my own music, and it really, to me, was a way to escape from, not that I had a bad childhood, but no one I don't think is really happy where they were when they were kids. So it was a way for me to get out of that. And then meeting Sean and forming a band, my first band, to me that was just the world. We played all over the tri-state area. We were a Christian rock band, but we played lock-ins and we played a festival, and to me that was, I got to see outside of Dayton. I got to travel because of music, and it just means so much to me.
Yeah. Sean, what about you? First instrument?
Guitar was my first instrument, and I wanted to be in a band pretty early on. I had a friend, James Michael, who was also in bands in Dayton, and he was in a band at the time. I was not, and I was extremely jealous of him and being in a band, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
How old were you at this point?
I was probably 14 at that point, 14, 15. Before that, my sister had vinyl, and I listened to everything from Pink Floyd to Loverboy to Cheap Trick.
Were you loving every minute of it?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
So that kind of started my whole, just how much I really like to listen to records, and then later on, I was really into, I don't know if we'll talk about the 80s that much, but the 80s was such a cool time period with different styles in the top 40, and I was really big into top 40, and then U2 really changed my whole perspective on music. I heard Under the Blood Red Sky, and I wanted to be the Edge. It was cool, it was raw, it was nothing like I've ever heard, and that kind of really propelled me into learning guitar. And then we formed the band, Dan and I's band. Probably I was 16.
Yeah, I was 15.
Yeah, when that started. And so ever since then, been in bands out of the Dayton area. And so, how about you, Will?
Like I said, I didn't start by playing music, but from a very early age, I collected music. And so I can remember whenever I had money growing up, which was basically 2 times a year, my birthday and Christmas, there were 2 things I would buy: records or baseball cards. As a grown adult, there are 2 things with discretionary funds that I buy. That's records and baseball cards. So some things never change. But I grew up with same thing. I had music accessible, same thing as Dan. And my dad had a decent little record collection, loved the Beatles. And I'll share mine first and then ask you guys. I think one of the first memories I have Well, the first couple of records I bought were the Fat Boys' first record.
Nice.
Yeah. Stick 'em.
Fat Boys are back.
They are back.
They'll never be whack.
Disorderlies.
Disorderlies is great. Fat Boys, and then the Beastie Boys, Licensed to Ill. So those are, I think, my first 2 records I owned, and then I bought a bunch of cassettes. Growing up in Dayton, hip hop was emerging, and so initially I wasn't as interested in local music until I got older, but I was obsessed with music from a very early age, and I'm just a few years younger than Dan and Sean, and so I almost don't remember not having MTV, or at least MTV was a big thing. So it wasn't only just listening or making your little pause tapes, trying to record songs off the radio, but it was also the whole video thing was pretty incredible, and there's some other stuff wrapped up in that. But Dan, do you remember kind of your first piece of music you owned yourself?
It was Survivor Vital Signs.
Ooh.
I bought it at Ames
Nice.
in Tip City. I think it was in the dollar bin, but I love that album.
Does that have Can't Hold Back on it, or is that Eye of the Tiger?
No, it was
wasn't
it was Eye of the Tiger was their big hit
Yeah.
from Rocky, but Vital Signs, Can't Hold Back.
Yeah.
That was the hit song off
great
that
song.
album. It is a great song. I was always, this is sound crazy. I always loved soulful, bluesy type stuff, and I told my mom one point, I think I was 12 years old, that I wanted to be Lionel Richie. So I always loved that.
Man, it's not a bad aspiration.
It isn't
honestly.
bad, yeah.
Kind of
Except
look
for
like them.
if you look real deep into my eyes, that's the only place I look like him.
Hello.
But hello, yeah, I can sing hello.
Are you easy like Sunday morning?
Ooh, more than you know. So, but yeah, music has always, like I alluded to before, music was almost like a companion to me, and I loved it. I think the first show I remember, not counting like Petra and AD,
They
and stuff
count.
like that. Okay, so on our young Christian days, Petra probably was the very first show that I saw. But I remember going to Hare Arena and seeing Stryper, and I was just blown away by it. Yeah, I think that was the To Hell with the Devil tour, and it was just like, it was amazing. It was incredible. Yeah.
What about you, Sean? First piece
First
of music
that
you
I
owned.
bought. So I bought a lot of 45s initially. I remember one of the Romantics,
Yeah.
Talking in My Sleep,
Yeah.
45. And I bought tapes. One of the early ones was Howard Jones' Dream in Action on vinyl I bought. But at that time, it was tapes were kind of the big thing. And so I'd buy quite a few tapes. Howard Jones' first album, New Order, Low Life, was a big album that I kind of really changed my whole perspective. First shows. I'm trying to think of the first real. Well, I know exactly. It was Yes. In Cincinnati. My parents dropped me and a friend off, and it was, what was that out? 901.
OU812?
That was Van Halen.
Van Halen? Owner of a Lonely Heart, whatever.
That album, I thought it was 9.
It's
Yeah,
some
it was like
digit.
a digit. But that
We'll
was
have
the
our
album.
producer Sprinkle look it up here.
Yeah, we didn't introduce our producer Sprinkle, but he's always in the background.
He's a vital part of this podcast.
But that was the first rock show I guess I went to, and
It's a pretty good one.
yeah, great album.
How about you, Will?
I'm pretty sure I went to 2 concerts. In the first year I went. First one was Lenny Kravitz Universal Love Tour at the Nutter Center. I don't think the Nutter Center had been open very long at that point. It was like 93. It was a terrible place to see a show. No shade on you, Nutter Center, if you ever listen to this. You're an inanimate object, but if you do listen to it, it's no offense. And I think I saw Jimmy Buffett at, oh man, what is the Buckeye Lake over in Columbus?
Wow.
Yeah, I don't even think that's been open since the mid-90s. The Dead played there. They had some big kind of shows like the Buffett and Dead stuff, but those are my first 2 big shows. And at that point, I'd still been buying music, and probably around that same time is when I Lenny Kravitz was a big one early for me. I was obsessed with liner notes, and I had the "Are You Gonna Go My Way" cassette, which is what that tour was. And you look on the liner notes of that and his previous 2 records, and he played like every instrument on the record. I mean, drums, bass, guitar, vocal, like he did everything. That was like a doorway into then becoming obsessed with Prince for a while, and still am really to this day. He was the first artist that I really started to meticulously collect his catalog of records. So I have really
what's
fond
your
memories.
favorite Prince record?
Oh, Sign of the Times.
It's a good one.
It's top 5 record of the '80s, and it's my favorite Prince record. So it's just an aside. Let's get back into to Dayton. Well, actually, before we go there, what you guys played in a band together, still play music together a bit. Why did you want to be in a band?
I always sang, no matter where
We heard you.
Yeah, but I mean, even as a child, to me, again, it was an escapism. I think, whether I was happy, whether I was sad, whatever. And I think for me, not having the skills to play guitar as well as I thought I needed to, playing with somebody else, and then when Sean and I went to church together, the whole way this started up is a guy started a Sunday school class to learn to play guitar. His name is Daryl Moore. So it was Sean, myself, 3 other people.
Sean McCorkle.
Yeah, Ian G. Ernestine and Joel Grimes. Yeah.
Shout out to any of those people who are listening.
Exactly. And so then we started playing, and I was a singer, and Daryl said we should start a band with you guys. So we started. I was playing drums and singing at the same time.
Phil Collins of Tip City.
Tip City, yeah. So we started
Drummer,
playing-
singer extraordinaire.
I know, and I was not good at either. But so we started playing cover songs, and then we started writing our own songs. And
Were you doing like Michael W. Smith, Fred's or Fred's?
no, we
Larry
were
Norman.
Yeah, Larry Norman, The Rock That Doesn't Roll. We even did What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding.
Oh, Elvis Costello?
Yep, we did U2. Oh gosh, I forget what.
I Will Follow?
I Will Follow.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And then we started writing our own stuff. Joel became the keyboardist. Sean McCorkle played bass. Angie played rhythm guitar and sang.
Did that band have an actual name at that point?
Righteous Anger.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, pretty early on, which is funny because it sounded like a heavy rock, but we were more 80s synth,
Yes.
maybe
So
alternative
everybody who
stuff.
didn't know you that came to see you was really disappointed.
Probably, yeah. And not just because of the name,
The
but,
music mainly.
but it was great. I mean, I remember playing our first show at our youth group, and I think we only had 3 or 4 songs, and we had to repeat the songs because people didn't want us to come off the stage.
Yeah.
And people were really into it. And then we cut a cassette, and again, we played. I mean, we played.
We did 2.
Yeah. But we played proms. We played church proms. And,
Hey, man, you gotta get started somewhere.
We did anything that anybody would want to. We did lock-ins.
So for prom, what was the ballad song that you would just be
Well, the
belting
funny
out?
thing is they kept asking us to turn it down, and we ended up just playing acoustic at that point. So
Didn't you tell them you booked Righteous
Yeah,
Anger? You're going to get Righteous
exactly.
Anger.
Come on now. But the reason, music to me was, it was everything, and then to find people who were like-minded,
Yeah.
and who could bring things I had in my head to life.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. And that band, I was 15 when we started, and I think I was 21 when we stopped playing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we played that long as Righteous Anger. And, I loved it. And I was chasing. In my head, I was going to be a rock star.
Sure.
School was not important to me, and that's all I wanted to do was play music. So.
How about you, Sean? Why do you want to be in a band?
I don't know. It just seemed like the natural progression. You know, I was so into music, just loved music, and I'm like, well, why can't I do music? And then when I got in that class Dan mentioned, it's like, oh, I can play the guitar, and you know, I just have to really practice a lot and work on my rhythm. My rhythm was horrible, and Daryl Moore was a fantastic guitar player, and he just kind of let us be ourselves, and he would teach us the basics and just say, go practice, go do your own thing. And we started writing original songs pretty early, actually, in that band. We didn't do covers for too long, and it was just cool to see things you created and then play it in front of people, and people seemed to like it, and we got more and more shows. So it was just... it kind of reinforced, I think, for us that you can do this. And it's not that hard. I mean, if you have the desire, you can be in a band. Yeah. And you got to put in the work. And we did that. So how about you, Will?
Part of the desire to learn how to play something was born out of just a love of music. And I think the first instrument I tried about the same time was mandolin and guitar. And I started to teach myself both. I took some lessons on mandolin, and then within a couple of years I almost accidentally ended up in a band because I played a weird instrument. And again, my origin story is birthed out of church as well. I knew a couple of guys who were graduating high school at the time. I was like a leader. Playing a little bit of music in church was really my first exposure to playing live, and kind of ended up in a band. And I think we started rehearsing in the spring of 2005, and we played our first show the end of June. Our first show actually with the entire band was in the Canal Street Band playoffs.
Wow. Yeah.
We hadn't played live. We had invited a bunch of people. I can remember, I think we were the first band up because we hadn't, you know, we'll talk about the band playoffs at some time, but they had us do a little quick 30-second sound check. And we had heard each other, you know, we played and practiced and things like that, but we played that, I can remember this like it was yesterday, played that first little 30-second sound check, and we sounded good. And you could hear the almost shock in the room. They were like, they almost gasped. They're like, wait a second, we didn't think this was going to be very good. And we ended up making it to the finals that year, you know, playing just 4 or 5 shows leading up to the band playoff final. So
what band was that?
I was Wes Tyree in the Easy Hearts. Wes still active in music, and hopefully at some point we'll get to talk to him about his experience because he's still out there writing and singing songs. And that was an interesting band. There were 6 of us in the band. 3 guys who just graduated high school, 2 of us who were in our mid-20s, and then we had this guy who was a local just gigger, played incredible guitar, played slide guitar. It was a great lead player, and just happened to end up together and playing music. And I just, you know, this will, I'm sure, come up for you guys, but there is nothing like being on a stage and having a crowd of people react to what you're doing in real time. Yeah. And it's just like, it's almost magic.
Well, so our first experience, Sean and I's first experience, not in a Christian setting, was Canal Street. Yeah. We played the Battle of the Bands. I was 17 years old, and I had to sit in the nosebleed section because
bleacher seats
because I wasn't old enough to sit in the main part of the bar. Yeah. So I had to sit back there. But there's something, and again, I can't wait till we talk more about Canal Street. There was just something magical about that stage.
The room.
It was a small room, but it was just a great feeling, and you felt like you were playing
music.
Yeah, but you felt like you were playing like you had made it. For a 17-year-old kid playing that Canal Street stage was just amazing to me. And I don't think I ever really looked back until I had a child, and then music, for me, kind of went away for a little bit, but
just a little bit. Yeah. It was always there.
And we'll talk later in this podcast about Canal Street. We'll do a deep dive into Canal Street and talk to some of the guests we're going to have on the podcast about Canal Street in depth. So we'll get into more of that. And Mick Montgomery and his influence on the Dayton music scene is profound.
Yes.
But we'll do deep dive into that later in this podcast. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, if you have any memories of Canal Street, whether you saw a show there, played there, and you're hearing this podcast, get in touch with us on all the appropriate channels and ways. We'd love to hear your story about Canal Street as we get into that a little bit down the road. That kind of sets some of our origin stories for how we got into music. I think it's a pretty common story. You just get hooked, and you just want to listen to everything and learn and play. But Dayton specifically is what we're going to focus on out of the gate. So we've hinted at this a bit, but why start with Dayton? There's an obvious answer to this. We're all from the region. We've seen shows, we've played shows, we've booked shows. We know people. We have friends who still play music, and around you guys are still playing music. But why, out of the gate, would anybody, one, be interested in Dayton, and just really in general, why? What about Dayton, Sean? How about you go first this time?
Well, when you think of Dayton, if you've been here or you're from here, it's a blue-collar town.
Yep.
GM was the driving force behind this town. And
a bunch of industry, GM, Meade,
NCR. NCR. So it was a thriving city. And with that, I think, comes do it yourself, right? You gotta, whether that's in music or whatever, the Wright brothers were started in Dayton, which that's a do-it-yourself right there. But with music-wise,
spirit.
It's a blue-collar town. And what's cool, I think, and I was talking to somebody recently in Kentucky, and they're like, "Oh, you're from Dayton, Ohio?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "That, I don't know. When I'm there, it feels grungy to me." And I think that sums up Dayton, kind of like, let's just make some music. Let's get a band together. Let's just start playing rock and roll or spaz rock, whatever you want to call it. Or there's so many different bands doing so many different things, especially, which I think we'll probably focus on coming up in this podcast, is the early 90s.
Yeah.
When we were really playing at Canal and other places around Dayton. But there was just so many bands playing, and they were all drawing crowds. Like, throw a couple names out: Candy Ass, Cage, Oxymorons, Sour Belly.
Yep.
I mean, there were so many bands, Real Lulu, just so many. And they all got along for the most part, and they supported each other. And that's the scene, was kind of very supportive of one another.
One thing I'd seen just recently, and we're going to focus at some point on the funk scene that came out of Dayton, but a big push of that was that they had put money into the schools, Dayton Public Schools, for music programs. And so kids pick any instrument they wanted, they got it for free, and then that really got the love of music into the Dayton public area. So I think that then fostered, again, it was an escapism. Your parents, I was anyway, latchkey kid. Thank you. You come home and we had 4 channels on TV, so you're not watching TV. So you're listening to music or you're playing music, and if you have an instrument together, and then again, if your friends are into music, then you're going to get with your friends, and if you had a basement or you had a garage, and you go in there, and Dayton really helped foster that. And I think you're right. I think the blue collar aspect of it, everyone had a little bit of money, so you could either buy music or you could go down and pick up a guitar or and start playing. And I think that's what really I understand the grungy feel of Dayton, because you're trying to build something, you're trying to better yourself or get out of and that was one thing about playing in Dayton, is we'd meet up with other bands
Yeah.
that were coming into Dayton, and then trade shows. So you could go play a show in Indiana because you played with a band that was touring, and trade shows all the time. So it helped. You just fostered those relationships with other bands, and it helped you get out of here.
Do you guys think that when you were playing, in particular in the early 90s, I mean, there's kind of a buzz that happened towards the mid 90s, really, but even as early as probably 91, 92. As you guys played around town, do you think you felt that buzz and that like there was something to the scene, not just that you were playing in a band and this just happened to be where you were from, but that it was something beyond that? I mean, it's easy to look back on it and say,
yeah, I remember distinctly when, like, the Breeders played Canal Street and Brainiac opened up. And I remember that show because there was a line, and the Breeders were it was before Last Splash. They had
Pod had been out, probably.
Pod, and then they did that EP Safari,
Yeah.
which is awesome. And it's like Breeders are playing at Canal Street, and it started this kind of buzz. And then Brainiac obviously went on to do great things. But that's when I really was like, wow, there's maybe something more to this scene than us just playing in town. Mm-hmm. There's other bigger bands. And then Guided By was kind of under the radar. Guided By Voices was under the radar. And then I remember when, like, Billy Corgan said, that's one of my favorite records. And it's like, Guided By Voices? Like, wow. And so that's when I had the feeling of, like, there's way more to this scene than just playing in Dayton.
Yeah, and it should be noted, it's, I think, known, if you know who the Breeders are, if you know who Brainiac is, if you know who Guided By Voices are, they emerged from Dayton.
And that's just a couple.
Yeah, that's a couple, yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, do you think you felt it, like, when you were playing in those shows back in the day?
I did, because you would hear about some of the bands, like, it was, Tuba Blues. But they had moved on to New York. They had gotten such a following that they moved on to New York. And then again, bands coming in. For us, we keep bringing it up. Canal Street, Mick was able to bring in some bands that you're like, why are they coming to Dayton?
Yeah.
But then, like, one time, this was after Righteous Anger broke up, or I left Righteous Anger, and Mick calls me up and says, hey, I need an opener for this blues. I don't remember who it was.
Yeah.
It was an old blues guy. He goes, I need an opener. And it was just because I'd been around, and so I got to play, open up for this guy, play 30, 35 minutes, and got to play in front of a crowd that, didn't know who the heck I was, but it was amazing feeling. And, at that point, I still believe that Dayton, I was able to go somewhere with music because of where I was in Dayton.
Yeah.
And one thing Brainiac always did when they were playing shows is that was their tagline. We're from Dayton.
Yeah.
FU, I think, was their shirt. It said FU, we're from Dayton. And it was like they brought a sense of pride to the scene, big time.
Yeah.
And that really was like, wow, we should be proud that we're from Dayton, just with the heritage of funk. And
Well, your second band, you had From Dayton with Love, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So that even propelled
A record
there.
was called for that, right?
Yeah.
Meet Me in the City, sponsored by Twisted River Coffee Roaster. Twisted River offers an unpretentious approach to specialty coffee. Visit twistedrivercoffee.com and use promo code INTHECITY at checkout to receive a one-time discount of 10% off your entire order. So talk about the next band after.
So after Righteous Anger, then I formed a band with some friends, Sean McCorkle and Nate McCorkle, drummer from Dayton, and Sean McCorkle's from Dayton, and Sid is from Dayton, called Morella's Forest, and we went on to record some records and tour and things like that. And we kind of ripped Brainiac off, and we would always say at our shows we're from Dayton, Ohio. And so we're traveling all over the United States.
And playing in the mid-'90s, that's like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
You're not ashamed of it at all
way.
because you've got bands that have been just on fire.
Right. And so we took pride in that, and it was due to Brainiac, because we were like, we should do that because we are prideful of where we're from, and the scene is awesome.
Yeah.
And I remember this band, they're called Ringo Death Star. And if you
I don't remember them.
yeah, they're still playing, and they're a very cool band.
That is
And
amazing.
They
That is
tour all
amazing name.
over, and that guy heard one of Mofo's records and said, "I got to go to Dayton. What is happening here?" And so they played Canal Street.
Did you say the name of your band? Morellis
Force, yeah. And so like that guy from Ringo Death Star was like, I have to play in Dayton. I got to see what this hype is about. And then I think later on in the 90s, with the Breeders and Guided by Voices gaining a lot of traction, Swearing at Motorists were gaining traction, and other bands. We may not mention them all, so we apologize. But it had a real sense, I think, in the music world, especially in alternative, that there is this scene. And we should pay attention to it because there's these bands coming out of this tiny little Midwest city.
Yeah.
And that's another. If you are listening to this podcast, if there's bands that you remember and you love to go see in Dayton, shout out to them and let us know. We're always wanting to learn more too. We don't know everything about music coming out of Dayton. We just know what we've been exposed to.
Yeah.
Will, who was your big gig that you played with that really?
Oh, it was much later because I didn't start playing until the early mid-aughts. And again, playing at Canal Street, I'd say probably the biggest one. One of the things that Canal Street did was they did bring in touring bands, and there are different levels to that. And I think that I don't remember the first year Canal Street and Mick Montgomery, started.
I think it was like 73.
Yeah, it was pretty early.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that early.
Yeah, we'll find the link. There's a link out there somewhere that has every show that was played at Canal Street ever, and we'll keep coming back to it. But one of the big shows, because we played in the band playoffs, and Wes Tyree, our lead singer, would play in the Songwriters in the Round. Mick got to know him just kind of like how he got to know Dan, and so he would call Wes up occasionally and ask him or whoever he's playing with to open. And I never get the name right, so producer Sprinkle is my he's our grammar police and my pronunciation and enunciation corrector. But the Avett Brothers, I've heard both ways. Kind of their last tour before they really hit it big. They were playing that kind of level of room, which Canal Street probably held 200 people,
Maybe, yeah.
Max. Yeah.
Yes, pushing it. I think.
Yeah, he had us come in and open for them on basically their last tour that was that level. And in my mind, it was 6 months later. They were playing on the Grammys with Bob Dylan, but it was probably a couple years. But it wasn't long after to where they really blew up. And it's a great feeling as a local opener to go in and play for a packed room, and that show was sold out. Yeah. And so to go in and meet those guys, and they were really nice. I have no idea if they listened to our music, but they were really nice in between sets and said hi. For me, though, I guess the Dayton pride started in discovering Guided by Voices. There was a record shop on Brown Street, which is near the University of Dayton, called Trader Vic's. And I had a couple of friends. I can remember, I have these moments, you guys probably have these things solidified in your memory of times where you heard something, or like that first memory of playing a show and sound checking and someone reacting to something you're doing. A guy that I was friends with in high school played Guided by Voices' Alien Lanes, which by that time they had already started to emerge. And he didn't tell me who it was, and I thought it was like some Lost Beatles song or something, because it's super hooky and just super poppy. And I'm like, what is this? I mean, I went out within the next few days, went to Trader Vic's on Brown Street and bought Alien Lanes, and that's it. I mean, I was just obsessed with their music and have been really since then. And that instilled in me a pride for the city that I came from. They're musicians, and there's music coming out of here that's worth attention, that is good and deserves to be, repped and talked about. And to this day, if someone from outside, a couple years ago, I was with a group of people, and a couple of them, they weren't from the Dayton area, like, why Dayton? I was like, first of all, take the disdain out of your mouth when you say that. Second, this is a great city that has a lot to offer, especially from an arts perspective, and in particular, music.
Yeah.
And so anytime I get a chance to talk Dayton music, I'm in.
I think another that we didn't hit upon too, another reason why there's such a unique and broad collection of different styles of music out of Dayton is the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of people who get stationed here, and then I worked at Books and Company, which Dayton is known for Books and Company at that time too. But a lot of people come in, they were stationed here in Dayton, get out of the service, and then come back and settle down in Dayton, just because it has that Midwest, very friendly, easy living, has good schools wherever you're at in the Dayton area. But yeah, I think Wright-Pat really brought in a lot of that too in this area.
It'd be interesting to see how many people who came through here were affected or impacted by that.
Well, I know that Don Thrasher, who we're going to have on later, he was a military brat.
Yeah.
And his dad got stationed here in Dayton, if I'm not mistaken. And that's how he ended up. He went to Centerville High School, and he played in bands. He played in some bigger bands.
Yeah.
And then settled down in Dayton, writing for the Dayton Daily News, and now he's retired, but he's also still doing stuff with WYSO, which was great. That's something else that we can hit on too later on. Is we had 97X out of Cincinnati that we could pull this alternative music from. That wasn't just the top 40. Yeah, WYSO.
Local
NPR. Yeah, NPR station.
That featured local music too.
Exactly,
That wasn't just college radio stuff, but there were shows dedicated to local musicians.
And we
music.
were all three of us had been gone out there and done interviews and played live for WYSO. So I think there's a lot of it was almost meant to be. I mean, all the conditions were right for music to really blow up. And then in our heyday, from the late 80s to the mid 2000s, I think that was really kind of, I'm not overlooking the funk that came out of Dayton, but for the alternative, the indie rock, punk, I think that was like the heyday at that time in Dayton, and that's really where I came out of. So my second band was a band called Tim. We said we were folk funk rock, but we won the Dayton band playoffs.
Emphasis on the folk.
Yes, exactly. But it was great because we would go, and that really put us on the college scene tours. So we were playing Penn State. We played Miami of Ohio. We'd play anywhere. We played Athens. And every time we would go and we'd sell out all of our merch, And really, we were just playing so we could buy more merch,
Yeah.
But it was amazing because every place we went, and I don't think we put it out there that we're from Dayton, Ohio, but we were really proud of what we were doing. And then several people from that band went on and did other good things with music. So it's cool.
So there's a point in time where these bands are emerging from Dayton. Canal Street's a thing. There are other venues, of course, that are around that have come and gone and are still here in some cases. But there was a moment in time where Dayton was labeled as the next Seattle. I mean, you talk about Dayton as being grungy or gritty, and the timing of everything. Early 90s, Seattle's kind of just blowing up. Every band from Seattle, they're trying to sign to some label, indie label, major label, whatever it might be. Well, then you have a couple of bands starting to emerge out of Dayton, and it gets kind of this next Seattle label.
Buzz. Yeah.
Do you think that impacted like people coming in to check out what was going on in the scene? I know you said the guy from Ringo Death Star was curious because of it.
Yeah.
Did you see that in other areas?
Yeah, I think there was an article in, I think it was Spin, if I'm not mistaken.
See if we can find a link to that.
Yeah, that was written about Dayton, and I think it really came out of the Breeders, you know, starting to play. And I think his name was Mike Breen. And if I'm not mistaken, I thought he played in the band too, or to some degree. I may be wrong on
connection.
that. Yeah, I may be wrong. But he wrote an article about Dayton and how he felt, just with everything going on at that time, how this really could blow up into something a lot more. Maybe not as big as Seattle, but a scene that is producing really good music.
Yeah.
And I remember when that came out, and it was like, wow, okay. And Brainiac started really taking off around that time also. And they definitely put their stamp on Dayton, for sure. Bands, the musicians out of Dayton were, I myself were enamored with them and what they were doing. And I remember seeing them with Shellac.
Brainiac, this is?
Yeah, Brainiac with Shellac, who's Steve Albini's band.
Rest in peace. He just recently passed.
And I saw them at the old 1470s.
Wow.
Old club in Dayton.
Yeah, an old club in Dayton that they played, who didn't really host shows, which was interesting.
Yeah.
But they played there, and that's a band from Chicago, a big band. I mean, big-time producer.
Well, Steve Albini produced.
Who produced Pod.
Yeah.
And so that's...
And still, and Kim Deal of the Breeders fame has a solo album coming out. I don't know when this is going to drop, but at some point in the near future. And I think one of the last things that Steve Albini produced were either tracks or some of the record that she has coming out soon.
Wow.
Because they continue to have a working relationship all throughout their career.
Yeah.
That's another thing. So you have a connection with Guided by Voices with Bob Pollard.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about that a little bit. But also, you and I worked at Starbucks back in the day. That's how we met.
Yeah, 20 plus years ago.
Kim and Kelly Deal were regular customers of ours, and we would talk to them. You know, they were easy to talk to.
Yeah.
Ran into them at a local grocery store buying beer, and just, you know, we knew what their drinks were when they came in, and, you know, you had that relationship. So as musicians, it was really cool. You know, I don't know if they knew that we were musicians or not, but
they didn't.
They just they were so personable, you know, and approachable, and that was, to me, that was amazing.
Well, probably one of the places they got recognized the most in town was that particular Starbucks in Oakwood when we worked there, and we had probably 25 people on staff at that time, and probably 75% of the staff was either in a band or dating someone in a band.
Right.
So when you'd have these local musicians come through, Robert Pollard would very occasionally come through and sit down.
From Guided by Voices.
From Guided by Voices. The people behind the counter are all like, oh my gosh, that's Kim and Kelly Deal. They're just coming in to get coffee. Or that's Bob Pollard sitting over here, just got his notebook working, and no one else is bothering them, but everybody behind the counter is super excited because we get to see these, you know, somewhat icons of the Dayton music scene.
Yeah.
One of the things, and the funny thing about my connection with Robert Pollard is that I didn't even realize it till after I started listening to his music. I bought Alien Lanes, which came out in 94 or 95, I forget it exactly, somewhere around 94, I think. B-1000 had already hit, and so they'd got the recognition, and I'd kind of continued to follow them through, and I ran into an old elementary school teacher of mine, Mrs. DeSalvo, who, if you're in or from the Dayton area, you know DeSalvo's Italian restaurant in Kettering. And I was talking to her. She remembered me because I was terrible, and she had to talk to my mom a few times because of some behavior things, but whatever.
Wow, you really?
Yeah, just a little
Pastor
bit.
Will, what?
Hey. And so we were just talking about, you know, I went to Lincoln IGE, went to Dayton Public Schools, lived there until I was 15. And she starts rattling off all these teachers that I'd had, and she said, of course, Mr. Pollard went on to be a rock star. And I've literally got Guided by Voices CDs in my collection. And it wasn't until that moment that it clicked that, wait a second, Mr. Pollard is Robert Pollard from Guided by Voices. I had Mr. Pollard as a teacher, and I have these vague memories. One, my parents remember us. My brother and I both had him, and they said, you guys all loved him. He was like the coolest teacher, and I don't really have too many memories. I could be totally out to lunch. I vaguely remember him having an acoustic guitar in the room and him doing like these pseudo Elvis impersonations. That could be totally made up, or I dreamed it or something. I've never asked him when I've run into him occasionally, but that's at least the memory I have. And so I've just been, extremely obsessed with the music of that band and bands in general from Dayton. So what do you think with this, Dan, the Dayton being the next Seattle? I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody was going to be the next Seattle, but what do you think caused it to not end up being the next big city? Other than the fact that I don't know what the population of Seattle is compared to Dayton, but probably there's a big difference there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, probably the lack of, well, we're nestled between Columbus, we're nestled and Cincinnati,
Indianapolis.
and Indianapolis. I just don't think we got the A&R people into town to see these bands. I don't think we had a big enough venue in Dayton to host something like that.
Yeah, there was Canal Street where you could get 150, 175 people.
Yeah,
and then you
Tumbleweed. You had Oregon Express. Yeah, Elbows. Yeah, you had Trolley Stop. But unless you were a cover band, and we were talking about it was McGuffey's.
McGuffey Lane.
McGuffey Lane. And they were a bar. They maybe
no, that was the band, but they played. We were trying to think of the name of the place that
it was off 35.
Yeah,
and they would host bands.
Yeah,
we played there too.
But I mean, maybe 350, 400 people.
Yeah, still pretty small.
So I don't think we had the venues to bring in the
mid-level
acts.
Yeah.
And we ran into that when we started the Dayton Music Fest, is that we didn't have a place, Jillies or Gillies, however you wanted to say it at that point. They held, I think, the most, and we took out all the tables, and we had
Boston Spaceships is
come play.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably some of the reasoning behind it.
You had basically Canal Street, all these other similar clubs, but then the jump from there was Hare Arena,
right,
which was like 12,000 people probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it was an arena. So you're right. It probably was a matter of there wasn't a way to scale in Dayton like in other big. I'm sure I haven't done extensive research on Seattle, but I'm sure there were places that bands could cut their teeth, move up the next level, and then that scene just blew up so fast that they were playing big venues.
Yeah,
and
quickly.
there was other venues in Dayton that would host shows. They weren't an actual venue, that would host traveling bands coming through.
Yeah.
At warehouses and things like that would host some like punk fests and things like that.
Yeah, I played a couple of those. But yeah, I think that's probably the reason. I think if you were going to go to Cincinnati, to Columbus, to Indianapolis, if your band was on the rise, I think that's where they would host the shows that an A&R would come and check out.
Yeah.
That's my feeling. I don't know for sure.
What else do we want to talk about with Dayton on this initial episode? Any other big memories or things that stick out to you? Shows that you went to along the way?
I mean,
my memories are just a lot of shows at Canal.
Yeah.
Tons
Right.
of bands coming up that were just really good bands that
well, and I think us hosting the Dayton Music Fest was, for me, by that point,
This is 2005 when
Yeah.
the Dayton Music Festival started.
and this is the 20th anniversary that just happened for the Dayton Music Fest. So we ran it for 5 years, sold it. They ran it for 5 years, and now it's been under the same leadership since then. But I think we kind of gave a venue or gave a way for some of these bands that only played to their crowds, got them to be able to play in front of other people.
Yeah.
And, whether that helped them or not, who knows. But I think when we started it, we didn't know if anyone would show up.
Right.
And then,
So why did you start it?
well, because you said, why doesn't Dayton have something like this? We had just played Midpoint as Gem City Rockers.
Cincinnati.
And we came back that night, and we're, rest in peace, Tanks. We were sitting at Tanks, and you're like, why doesn't Dayton have something like this? I'm like, because no one wants to book it. So I went back to work, Starbucks.
Yep.
And I think by Tuesday, I had a game plan. I'm like, if we can get these venues to say yes, and if we can get some sponsorship, then I think we can do it. And by that October is when we launched the Dayton Music Fest. And again, we didn't know if anyone would show up or not.
Yeah.
There was lines.
Yeah.
There was lines at
It was great.
each venue.
Yeah, it was
we
great.
had Canal Street didn't want to be a part of the first year, and then after we had such success of the first year, Mick was like, "Why wasn't I part of this?" And we're like, "You didn't want to be part of this."
Yeah.
Well, to be fair,
Yeah.
the festival, we'll talk. I guess we'll kind of wrap up talking about the Dayton Music Fest, and maybe we'll do a deeper dive on the 20 years of it in its existence. But you guys really started on 5th Street because there were probably 6 different places.
Yeah.
And you had 4, I think, that first year. And Elbows was a venue at the time that was tucked away.
By the Greyhound station.
Yeah, by the bus station. So that was the farthest walk. But everything else was right there on 5th Street in what's called the Oregon District. If you've ever been in Dayton, you've likely been up and down. It's an old brick road, one, couple block little radius party district basically in the middle of downtown Dayton. But a place that you could go and see live music. I don't know about any night of the week, but certainly on weekends, every weekend you could go to see live music. So it made sense to have a centralized festival that you could buy a ticket for, and the whole thing was you're highlighting bands that either were currently playing in Dayton or bands that had some connection to Dayton. And he stayed pretty true to that.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
I think even to this day they're pretty much doing the same kind of thing where there's some kind of connection to it. And how many bands did we have that first year? 20?
Sean booked it. I
want to say it was
It was one night,
4 venues, right?
4 venues, so we're talking probably 20 bands.
Yes.
I think so.
It expanded after the first year. We didn't know what to expect. And some nuances to the festival we wanted to do differently than other festivals is we actually gave the bands $100. And so and that's not a lot of money. We know that, but you don't usually get paid to play those types of festivals. And we wanted to give back a little to the bands.
Well, and the other selling point to the clubs was that you don't have to pay the bands.
Yeah.
You don't have to work the door. You don't have to
Right.
pay the bands. You don't have to pay the sound people.
We did all that.
We took care of all that. They just got their bar money.
Yeah. And for those who were attending, you could buy one ticket. I think it was $10.
Yep.
$10.
And go to 4 different clubs. And realistically, you couldn't see 20 bands, but you could see probably 10 or 15
Yeah.
if you're walking up and down the strip and time it right.
Right.
And the other part about the Oregon district was the bands, this indie rock, that's what we were kind of geared towards, indie rock bands. Not all. Like West Tyree was folky and kind of some bluegrass feel a little bit, not a lot, but they weren't all indie rock. Most were, but the Oregon district at that time really wasn't promoting bands like that. And so we brought in a different style of music. And then they said, wow, this is here. And which led to Dan and I booking at Oregon Express because we wanted to keep the Dayton Music Fest alive.
Yeah, the momentum. Yeah.
So we started booking shows at Oregon Express. And that was a huge success because we would give, I think, all the door, 90% of the door to the bands.
90% of the door to the bands, yeah.
Which we got that from Canal, and Mick was really good to the bands at Canal Street. And we wanted to pay the bands. They're drawing the people. We're not. We're just giving them a stage and a venue to play. And it was cool because all the bands that played Dayton Music Fest then started playing the OE. We would book shows every Saturday night there. And so it just gave them another venue that was not playing that type of music at the time to say, wow, we can do well at this. You know, obviously a business owner wants to make money. And which then propelled Dayton Music Fest to continue to add more venues. Mick, you know, with Canal then hosted the first night, just Canal Street, and kind of opened up the festival. Then we went to 2 nights, and that's due to the fans in Dayton, to the bands.
But we were drawing people from Cincinnati, from Columbus, you know, coming. It wasn't just Dayton. People found out that, hey, this is a cool event going on. You know, we never reached the point of like midpoint or something like that. But I think I just went to this last Saturday to the Dayton Music Fest, and there's still a buzz. It's still awesome that people are coming out and wanting to see these local bands play.
I just remember those first few. I played, I think, the first 3 years, although Dan tried to block me from playing the first year.
I don't remember that.
Oh, do you know?
I honestly don't, but that's
he
all
loves
right.
this story. Because we had just started, and we played in the band playoffs in June, and so we literally had only played by October, you know, a half a dozen. Maybe we played more than that, but it was certainly less than 10 shows, and we made it to the band playoff finals, and Dan was booking. I'm like, man, come on, put us on. He's like, I don't know. He put us on, and it was great. We played at the trolley stop, and it was packed, and we had a great time. I just remember the feeling at the end of the night. I think we ended up at Elbows, which was, let's go through the venues. That first year was Elbows,
Oregon Express,
trolley stop,
and Tumbleweed.
Yep. And I think all of those but Elbows is still around, right?
Tumbleweed is under a different name now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you could walk up and down the strip, and I remember I think we ended at Elbows, and Swearing at Motorists played.
Yeah.
And they had, I think, was Swearing at Mo's Dave Doman, who is from Dayton originally, I think is still making music and lives overseas. They closed it out. I just remember the feeling of everyone kind of converging down at Elbows and feeling like, I'm sure you guys as the ones who booked it probably felt, you know, elated that people showed up and they were excited, and it was just it was a fun night to be a part of.
And I remember Doman saying, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, like serious pride. I think Enon maybe played the next year. Was Enon, John Smertzel, who was in Brainiac, formed Enon, great band.
You sure that wasn't the first year?
It was the second year.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they played at Canal, and Canal wasn't part of the first year.
No, they did not. They played at, I'm pretty sure they played on Fifth Street. We're going to have to fact check ourselves, but yeah, we'll have to go back. Because I have a vague memory of walking by. I didn't get in to see Enon. I think they may have been at OE. I don't know. I just remember being outside and the place was packed and no one else could get in.
Well, that's the way Canal Street was. Whoever we had there at Canal Street, that was when they...
Second year.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that's when they put a barrier outside. So people they couldn't get inside
could still hear.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't hear most of the bands because we were
busy.
Checking, and, you know, replenishing the cash boxes and the armbands and everything. But to me... And I said this before amongst friends, besides my son, the thing I'm most proud of is the Dayton Music Fest, because I feel that
Your marriage too.
Well, yeah, you know, she puts up with me. She should be proud of that.
That's true. Christine, you're a great woman.
But no, what I'm saying is, so legacy wise,
yeah.
You know, obviously my son, and he's an amazing kid. I met Sprinkle through my son, and I'm so glad.
Producer Sprinkle.
And but the Dayton Music Fest, and to see it go on 20 years, you know, for 20 years is, to me, is amazing, and I hope it goes on for another 20 years, whatever form that takes, you know. So.
Well, I think we'll come back to the Dayton Music Fest at some point. I think we've laid some groundwork. We have some guests lined up. So if you have joined us in this first episode, follow us on all the platforms where you can find us. And keep an eye out. We've already mentioned Don Thrasher, whom we hope to talk to soon. Don is a wealth of knowledge as far as the Dayton music scene goes, having written about probably all of the bands that we played in, played shows around town. He's seen a lot, so we can't wait to talk to him. And we have some guests coming up who played in bands that we've already talked about today, and we're very excited to do that. We're excited to get going. So we hope that you will join us again. Dan and Sean, any closing thoughts?
Please come along on the journey with us. This is really fans of music and friends talking about our love of music. And if you have a love of music, hopefully this will touch some point with you guys.
Yeah, and we're not experts on the Dayton music scene. We've experienced it firsthand, but we don't know everything about the scene. And so if you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear those.
And what we hope to do is go beyond Dayton then at some point too.
Yep.
And go into other music.
Cities, regions, scenes,
Right.
Whatever it might be.
Yeah. And so, if there's something you want to hear or you think we need to touch on, another thing like sprung out of, and we'll talk about it again, the Dayton Music Fest was Lady Fest. And I think we need to make sure that we hit upon the female voice of music. And, Kim and Kelly are kind of the pinnacle of that out of Dayton. But a lot of these female-led bands.
Real Lulu was an all-female band
Yeah.
out of Dayton that were a great band. And
So if you have suggestions, please reach out to us. We want to make sure we don't miss anything, but our knowledge is limited, so go from there.
Limited, but we have this great thing called the internet
Exactly.
in 2024 that can help us reach out to you and to
Wait, this is
many.
2024?
Well, right now, as of recording, it is. Who knows when this will drop? But gentlemen, it's good to be with you,
good to
and
be
I
with you.
look forward to keep talking about not only the Dayton music scene, but just music in general, and having a good time with you guys.
Thanks.
Yes, thanks.
Peace.
Thanks, Sprinkle.
This episode of Meet Me in the City has been recorded at B&G Cigar Lounge, your home away from home, located in West Carrollton, Ohio. You can find them at 319 West Central Avenue. They have an ample humidor, all of the supplies you can need for your cigar smoking pleasure. We hope that you will stop by and support them as they are supporting us on this journey.